Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a bit since I have done a video. I apologize for that, but I am right back at it, and I'm gonna hit it strong from here on out. In today's video, we are gonna go over the awesome Super Bowl between the Cincinnati Bengals and the LA Rams. I'm gonna talk about kind of quarter by quarter what I saw, some of the key moments of the game, things that happened, break that down for you guys, and then at the end, I'm gonna circle back, talk about the game overall as a whole, and who were those major impact players. If you guys disagree with any of my takes, I would love to hear about it. Drop it down below. That is why we do it. Let's get that conversation started. If you are new to the channel, welcome, welcome, welcome. Please consider liking and subscribing. Your support means so very much to me. It helps me out a ton and enables me to do what I love so I can keep bringing you guys the content that you love. With that all said, done, and out of the way, let's get into this Relentless rundown. So for me, this was really a win-win game. I was certainly pulling for the Cincinnati Bengals to an extent because of, number one, their history of inadequacies. And I also have a soft spot for Joe Burrow. And I had both Joe Mixon and T. Higgins on my fantasy team all year, so I really couldn't help myself. I had to go with them. But I don't think that anyone in their right mind could have pulled against Matthew Stafford either. After suffering for over a decade in Detroit, 12 years to be exact, to get out from underneath that dark cloud and to take this team, which has gone all in for the last couple of years, trying to get over the hump and win the whole thing, is pretty special. No matter who came out on top here, I was going to be happy, so the true goal going in was to get a game that came down to the wire. We were not disappointed at all. We got to bear witness to the cherry on top, which has been one of the most epic NFL postseasons of recent memory. We know that it starts and ends at the quarterback position. So before we jump into it, I'm gonna give you a rundown quick of the postseason stats for these quarterbacks coming in. For Matthew Stafford, he completed 72% of his passes. He threw for 905 yards, 6 touchdowns, a single pick. He also rushed for 2 scores, which is crazy because he hadn't rushed for a touchdown in over 5 years, postseason or regular season. He finished with a 115.6 rating in those first 3 games for the Rams. For Joe Burrow, a little bit less impressive. Nonetheless, he was excellent. 69% completion percentage, 842 yards. He had just 4 touchdowns and 2 picks. He had a 96.2 rating. And the biggest stat that I can give you is that coming into this game in those first 3, he was sacked 12 times, 9 of them against the Tennessee Titans. With that stat in mind, coming in, I knew the story of this game would be how would the Bengals offensive line be able to match up with all of the studs on the Rams defensive front. We talk about Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, of course, A'Shawn Robinson is a run-stopping beast, and no one better than Aaron Donald at what he does. Those guys dictated games all postseason, and it seemed inevitable due to the struggles up front for Cincinnati that would again be the case. How Cincinnati would be able to protect Joe Burrow or not would dictate the outcome. It certainly did not take me long to get emotionally invested in this game. I got all riled up early on when the Bengals had their opening possession. It's 3rd down and 1, and Cincinnati gives the ball to Samaje Perine. He's stuffed short. You have Joe Mixon still, right? He's still on the team, still a player. Why isn't that dude getting the critical touch? Next play, incomplete pass, turnover on downs on that 4th down. It was a big gamble that came up short early. I did like the call. I appreciated the aggressiveness to go for it early from Zach Taylor. I love that he is not gonna try to lose this game. He is going for the win, and he is going to leave it all on the line and trust in his team. Going for it was not the issue. The issue here was that on 3rd and 4th down, Joe Mixon was off of the field, and I do not like taking the threat of him out of the game in those critical situations. It was the beginning of some questionable play calls from Zach Taylor, and great field position after the turnover on downs led to an Odell Beckham Jr. touchdown to make it 7-0 LA. Jamar Chase comes up big next. He has a 46-yard bomb, and that was immediately after a Who else? Joe Mixon had a big 12-plus yard run for a first down. You could sense that Cincinnati was just waiting for an opportunity to test LA deep, and that run gave them ability to do so. Joe Burrow, I love what he did for most of the day. He showed no fear early on. He threw Jalen Ramsey's way a ton. I felt like he was actually specifically targeting him, and I love the fearlessness. I love the confidence that he was displaying when he was challenging him. I really thought that he was trying to rally his team and show that he, and in return, they would not back down from anyone, regardless if it was possibly the best cornerback in the NFL. T. Higgins was blanketed on a throw to the end zone, and that forced the Bengals to settle for a field goal when Jalen Ramsey knocked it down. So even though it did not work out, I love the aggressiveness nonetheless, and that made it 7-3 Rams. I know I dogged him a little bit during the regular season here and there, but I have to say that Sean McVay called a great game. He was able to move players around the formation with a ton of pre-snap motion, and that got excellent one-on-one opportunities for LA, and they were able to capitalize on them. We saw it often with Darrell Henderson. He'd come out of the backfield, a linebacker would be on him, and they loved that matchup. And we also saw it on Cooper Kupp's first touchdown that made it 13-3 LA. On that score, it was an excellent play design, and that got the game's best wide receiver open in a ton of space. It seems like almost every week, Cooper Kupp is able to find that field to work with, even when the defense is keying on him and they know he's the guy getting the ball. We saw it multiple times against the Buccaneers too, namely on that bomb towards the end of the game that would end up sealing it, and a couple times in the first half. He may not have that raw size or the athleticism that other elite wide receivers have, but he is an all-world tactician, and he knows how to run routes better than almost anybody. He has incredible ability as well to read defenses and make them pay consistently. I feel like he is not getting the respect that he deserves, but that is it. My rant is over on Cooper Kupp. He's amazing. Moving on. The Bengals' first touchdown on their trick play inside the 10-yard line was nothing short of legendary. Joe Mixon took a ball on a toss before he pulled up and floated a pass over the top in the back of the end zone to T. Higgins. Honestly, I could not believe how perfectly that ball was thrown. There was not a ton of room for Joe Mixon to work with, and the guy may be the fill-in if Joe Burrow continues to get killed next season. All jokes aside, for some of the disagreements that I had with Zach Taylor, that call showed a ton of confidence in his team, and they were rewarded from it. It would make it 13-10 Rams as the Bengals pulled within a field goal. This play ended up being possible because Cincinnati had been able to open up LA's defense just a little bit by finding some success on the ground over the last couple drives leading up to it. It put the Rams on their heels just enough to be able to hurt them. OBJ's knee injury late in the second quarter was really hard to watch, and regardless of what you think about the guy, he certainly didn't deserve to go out of the Super Bowl like that. When you see those non-contact injuries, he was just running a drag route over the middle of the field, tried to kind of reach out and catch the ball and pulled up. You know that it is never good. Prayers go out to him and his family. He was having such a great game too, which makes it even worse because he already had 50 yards receiving and that score. That was even more brutal. Later on in that drive, Stafford would end up throwing an interception, but it was basically a punt because it happened on 3rd down and 14, and it was not a critical play. It would be the last big play with the Rams taking a 13-10 lead going into halftime. To kind of wrap up the first half, at the end of 2 quarters, it really felt like this game was going to go down to the wire. Both teams were just feeling each other out, with the big story being that defensive line for the LA Rams. They were in Burrow's face a ton, and Cincinnati was clearly forced to keep the throws short to try to help that lack of protection. The playbook for the Bengals shrunk significantly as it became just a hope and a prayer for him to get a full 3-step drop before the heat was on in the backfield. The Rams were unable to get anything going on the ground, but found success underneath as the Bengals resorted to playing a ton of just shell defense and keeping things in front of them. It really forced Los Angeles into a one-dimensional attack, but LA countered it fairly successfully. As for the injury to Beckham, I was not super concerned with the loss because Van Jefferson was available, but it was a story to watch as he had looked excellent in that first half, and he had combined for 13 touchdowns with Cooper Kupp since week 10. The Bengals would waste no time and start that second half off with a bang, a 75-yard touchdown strike to T. Higgins, who absolutely manhandled Jalen Ramsey. There was a ton of contact on this play. It was clearly an offensive PI, face mask, whatever you want to call it, that was missed. There was no doubt that it should have been called, and it was a huge shift in momentum for Cincinnati. Now, I am usually a proponent of letting players play and accepting the physicality, but here Higgins was over the top, and I am baffled that he was able to get away with the pull, push, tug, whatever. That being said, once again, it came down to that confidence, that aggressiveness of Joe Burrow to step up in the pocket and give his guy a chance at a one-on-one with one of the best in the league. That is what made it possible. There are few quarterbacks who would have even attempted that throw, and it allowed Cincinnati to cash in. Props to Joe Cool for throwing it. On the next possession, Matthew Stafford threw his second pick of the game, this one off of the hands of newly minted number 3 wide receiver and rookie late round pick Ben Skoranek. Think I got that right. Who took a much heavier role in the offense without Beckham in it. It is tough to blame Stafford on this throw, really, because neither of his touchdowns were bad ones. They just did not work out. But at that point, you really have to start to question for the Rams, how are they going to adjust to being without Odell? It certainly was not looking promising. I was thinking that surely Van Jefferson was going to be asked to step up and carry a larger load, but to that point in the game, he had done a whole lot of nothing. The pick put the Rams in a really bad position. Defensively, you could feel the momentum shifting in the Bengals' favor as they got the ball in excellent field position after just scoring a touchdown. And you got the feeling another touchdown here would signal Cincy potentially being able to run away with it. However, LA's got this guy, may have heard of him, name's Aaron Donald, and he would make sure that that would stop quickly and without mercy. He picked up not one, but 2 monster sacks as the Bengals looked to make it a 2-possession game, and I honestly believe that those 2 plays were the game's biggest turning points. Not only did they get his team fired up by shoving a scrambling Joe Burrow out of bounds, but he had a critical sack on 3rd down in the red zone, and that forced a field goal for Cincinnati instead of being able to tack on another touchdown. If Cincinnati had been able to score in back-to-back touchdowns to start that second half, I think LA would have been in a desperate situation. You never want to be there. Instead, the league's best defensive player of the last decade stepped up and he kept the score within a touchdown. It's now 20-13 Bengals. As the game wore on, it was really clear that the loss of OBJ was large. The Bengals felt a lot better about being able to get out of that shell, get out of that cover 2, and attack the line of scrimmage. It was a really impressive performance from that side of the ball as they constantly made life hard for Matthew Stafford. He had no running game at all to support him. He also battled through an ankle injury. He sustained that late in the 3rd quarter as he took a sack. You could see him getting twisted up. You'll love to see the fight, the grit that he exhibited as that ankle was clearly bothering him, but ultimately you knew that there was no way that Matthew Stafford was coming off of the field. The Bengals also got a quarterback scare of their own, and that was early in the 4th when Joe Burrow got twisted up during a sack of his own, and he would return as well. Burrow was sacked 7 times. That tied for the most in Super Bowl history with Roger Staubach, and that happened all the way back in Super Bowl 10. In all, Burrow sustained a cringe-worthy 11 quarterback hits. It's like that quarterback drill that probably should be outlawed, where the guy just gets up and someone else comes and knocks him down. Gets up, someone else just comes and crushes him. The guy getting crushed over and over was Joe Burrow. Now back to the 2 most important possessions of the game. It started out with Matthew Stafford, who had it all out in front of him with the game on the line. He's down 20-16. There's 6:13 to go in the game. It did take another great play call by both Sean McVay and OC Kevin O'Donnell to help him seal the deal. On a 4th down and 1 from their own 30-yard line, the Rams went for broke. Unable to move the ball on the ground the entire day, Cooper Kupp got the carry on a jet sweep, and he moved the chains to keep the drive alive. To have that kind of a play called, that was just an amazing display of awareness and understanding from the coaching staff with the game on the line. and the execution by the players could not have been better. Up to that point, LA had 21 carries for 37 yards. The creativity made for an easy conversion, and we just have not seen that for most of the teams in the postseason. It was a beautiful thing. I've been used to watching 4th down and 1s, run up the middle, stuff short, Tennessee Titans. So to see that kind of change it up and to see it work was absolutely awesome. The Rams were clearly playing to win the game. They were not trying to lose it, and that was the difference. With 4:30 to go in the game, Cooper Kupp had just 53 yards, so the Bengals had done a really good job of keeping him contained, but he took over on that Rams last possession, not only rushing for that critical first on a 4th down, but he also caught the eventual game winner, and he actually caught the game winner twice. His second, which was the official score, was a perfectly thrown back shoulder ball near the pylon where Kupp created enough separation within 3 yards, which is really hard to do, by the way, and that's what made it possible. Now, to rewind just a little bit, prior to that second score by Cooper Kupp, there was definitely a questionable call on 3rd down and goal. It was a hold on Logan Wilson, linebacker for Cincinnati, who had been playing excellent all game. He was trying to cover Cooper Kupp, which first and foremost, when you have a linebacker on Cooper Kupp, something is wrong with your defense. Or it, of course, could have been just an excellent play call once again by Sean McVay, Kevin O'Donnell, to be able to get that play design in where somehow Cooper Kupp is being covered by a linebacker. But there was contact on that play for sure. But if I'm being honest, I think it was more a makeup call for that T. Higgins play earlier on in the game. I don't exactly fault the refs for throwing the flag, but I would have loved to be able to see what the Rams pulled out of their hat on 4th down instead of being able to get that fresh set of downs. After the Rams took that 23-20 lead, Joe Burrow would have one more chance to steal a win. 2 timeouts, minute 25 to go, only needing a field goal to force overtime. He certainly had a great opportunity. For the second time in a critical situation, however, Joe Mixon was nowhere to be seen, and it was Samaje Perine getting a touch that was stuffed short. I know that Mixon didn't have a ton of success, I get that, but he still did average nearly 5 yards a carry, so it's not like he was a bum. How can you possibly turn to Perine once again after he failed you on the exact same play on the game's first possession? The worst part of all of this is that those 2 carries were Samaje Perine's only carries of the entire game. So for me, that is just pitiful. There had to be another option here. The threat of Joe Mixon needed to be on the field with your season on the line, period. On 4th down, Aaron Donald got home, and that was all she wrote. It was a fitting end to a dominating performance from the Rams up front. For the Cincinnati side of things, I feel for Joe Burrow first and foremost. As any quarterback who can take that sort of a beating and still push through it deserves an award. But I think we all know that his time eventually is going to come. This was just not it. The kid has a very bright future ahead of him. He's only scratching the surface of what he is truly capable of. He has under 2 full years of NFL experience under his belt. Imagine for a second, in Bengals' dream world, if they actually had an offensive line. They'd be dangerous. Since he is going to be a threat for years to come, that much is certain. Their playmakers, all of them, stepped up here. 189 yards and 2 scores from that T. Higgins and Jamar Chase combination. Joe Mixon averaged nearly 5 yards a carry. I love the balance that Cincinnati played with. They wanted to keep that Rams pass rush on their heels. They were able to do that a little bit, even when they struggled on the ground at times. The only thing that I would have done differently from their perspective was getting the ball to one of those 3 with the game on the line instead of feeding the backup. I do not think that you can say enough about how that Bengals defense rose to the occasion. Now, their ability to stonewall that rushing attack forced an almost perfect game from Sean McVay and co. to be able to get the job done. They executed their game plan to perfection, and it nearly worked. But sometimes a great offense just beats a great defense, and that is what happened on that Rams go-ahead drive. I would have loved to see them find a way to stop Cooper Kupp the way that they had for most of the game on that final drive, but the guy was just too good when it mattered most. To LA side of things, and when you just look at the box score straight up, it's kind of hard to figure out how LA won this game, to be honest. They turned it over twice. Now, Cincy did not do that at all. The Rams couldn't get anything going at the ground. They had just 43 yards, and they lost their number 2 wideout just before halftime, and they trailed heading into the final frame. Now, usually when you think about all those factors, it spells doom for a team, but LA had too many playmakers on both sides of the ball that would not take no for an answer. While Matthew Stafford was not perfect, I do not blame him much for those 2 interceptions, and he was able to make plays when it counted, and he found his guy when it was do or die. He almost had 300 yards. He was pretty spectacular. He did exactly what LA brought him there to do. Seeing him celebrate with his family on the field when all is said and done, that's what it's all about. And as a fan who has seen him rot in a wannabe football organization, sorry Lions fans, it's the truth, for seemingly forever, this guy deserved it more than just about anyone. Now, his guy, that was Cooper Kupp, the NFL's Triple Crown winner by leading the league in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. He rightfully, for me, won that MVP by becoming mini Megatron for Stafford with 5 minutes left. He finished with over 90 yards and a pair of scores. Once Beckham left, those 2 guys were basically the entirety of the offense for LA. Bottom line, they won it on the back of that elite defensive line who absolutely tortured Joe Burrow while holding the Bengals to converting just 3 out of 14 third downs. There was not a human being on the planet who was going to stop Aaron Donald in that second half, and the trio of Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, and Donald combined for 5 sacks. It was certainly not Jalen Ramsey's best game. I think that's fairly obvious, but he certainly got jobbed on that long throw to Higgins, and he repeatedly stepped up in other critical situations throughout the game. And even though he got beat a few times, he was still a difference maker for that defense. The Rams overall were super disciplined. They committed just 2 penalties for 10 yards, and they scored a touchdown in all 3 of their trips to the red zone, while Cincy capped off on their 3 opportunities in the red zone with just a single score. Those factors were enough to be the difference. It was awesome that, at least for the most part, the referees did not have a major impact in this game, and the players were allowed to play. It is exactly how the game is supposed to be. I really don't think there's much more that we could have asked for as fans. We were treated to one of, if not the best 7-game stretch of games in NFL playoff history. Between those 7 games, 24 total points separated the teams. 6 out of 7 of those games were decided by a field goal. The only one that wasn't was that epic Bills and Chiefs game that was a walk-off touchdown in overtime. There were 2 OT games and a Super Bowl decided in the final minute. Truly unbelievable. And that's a wrap for this video. With the NFL season now officially over, Relentless Press is going to be transitioning to new stories across the sports landscape, so keep an eye out for those. Make sure you like and subscribe so that you do not miss a thing. Your support is so very appreciated. It means the world to me. Like I said, if you disagree with any of my takes, or just want to give your thoughts, your opinions on the game, please drop those down below. That is why I do it. I love the engagement, so do not hesitate. This is Relentless Press. I'm your host, Abraham Opatz, and we'll see you next time.